Hello, my name is Dr. Helmut Calabrese, and I'm going to, and I work with the composition online, and I'm here to introduce you to one of the subjects that you could learn with me if you to pick me as your student. Yeah, if you pick me as your student. So let me share at least this one this one subject that I would like to be able to teach a student is orchestration. I can also teach other things to the students, such as composition and all those. But let's keep it. Keep this as a 6-minute webinar. So let me share the screen. Let me share what we have here. Sharing this so that you could see this. Well, I would like basically to introduce you to the technique of orchestration. Um, let's see. This is an introduction to orchestration where we will ask questions, provide answers, and discuss issues that are necessary to learn the aspects that are needed to be a master in the craft of orchestration. Um, Basics. What are the basics of orchestration? Um, what are the basics of the orchestration? Well, the orchestra is divided into sections, and these sections are known as choirs. You could Google this, but I'm just going to review it briefly. There's the woodwind section, the brass section, the string section, the percussion section, and there's the other instruments of the choir, like the piano and the harp. And there also could be the electronic portions, which now that we have synthesizers, we can create a tape or CD of what we want played while the orchestra plays, to be electronic orchestra with electronics. Okay, so we can talk about these instruments during our lessons. Um, And now, but I think, but I want to emphasize that the reason to have a teacher is because there are things you're not going to learn in a book, because books won't always do a good job of asking questions. Yeah, that's what composers do, or people ask questions. Books try to answer questions that people ask. And so we have to formulate a question, and then we get answers, and well, that's how we grow. So how do we write? How to write for the orchestra? As a beginning orchestrator, you need to ask yourself some basic questions about the instruments that you're using in the arrangement. And these basic questions will hold true for all the instruments of the orchestra. We're going to need to know the playing range of the instrument. How high can it play? What are the notes that encompass its range? You can't ask a flute player to play what a tuba player can play, and then some instruments are much closer in range, but just a tiny bit. The range of a clarinet is not the same as the range of a, let's say, a piccolo. And they play in our flute. They have similar range, but in some areas of the range all areas of the range are not going to sound as well, or they're going to have different characteristics. And then of course some notes aren't there. What are the performance capabilities of the instrument? You can't think that the guitar player can play the same thing as a let although a guitar player is very versatile. Um, let's say a trumpet player, for example, is very good at repeated notes. What instruments would you assign for repeated notes and repeated ideas, music and things? You have to be careful not to give them to instruments that don't play repeated notes very well. This is all part of learning how what kind of musical figures go well with an instrument, so that you don't have some unpleasant surprises. We have to talk about that. What Number three? What is doubling, and how does that affect the sound of the orchestra? Doubling is where I like to think the magic happens, because when you reinforce the primary instrument in a way that it changes the color, it becomes very distinct, the way you want it to sound stronger, or you want to just give it some transparency. You want to do many different color effects. And to what about and then how to become a master composer? How do we go about this? Well, you have to do many things. First, you had to learn from your models, the great orchestrators of the past and the present. Um, and how do we find these things? Well, the internet, there's resources, free resources. We can look at scores, music libraries. You can also order scores. You can order pocket scores or small scores. Um, this is how you go about it. It takes quite a while to master it, at least getting the really good idea of it. And then throughout your life, you're never going to stop learning. How does orchestration affect the composition, right? Well, orchestration and composition go hand in hand. You can't really think about a composition without thinking how it's going to sound, who's playing it, either a soloist or three people together, or a whole orchestra. And the orchestra itself, you should view the orchestra as an instrument. It's one instrument with lots of sounds. How does for example, we need to ask questions. How does light affect the orchestration? Light in sound, light sound, dark sounds. How does depth? How do you create an effect of depth in orchestration? How does referential thinking and metaphor affect our orchestration? Meaning, in other words, how do we create meaning in our orchestration? So it represents, a flute could represent a bird, for example. That's a really, really basic idea, but there's many things that play into this. An ocean could be represented by a string section, as you can see in the music of Debussy and La Mer. If a great orchestrator composer of the Impressionism period, how to create a balance in the orchestration. Just like in a painting, you have balance of light and dark. You do the same thing with sound and color. How does orchestration help to create form? Just like the composition has form, the way we arrange our colors to come back into, and how they repeat, disappear, or how they balance each other, that's going to create a form that reinforces our form. Basically, there's many questions essentially in orchestrating, just like there are in composition. And so it's good to have all these things in mind when you're writing your piece, as you're thinking already of the orchestration. And you can email me with questions at hcc2035@nyu.edu. That's where I got a PhD in composition. So I really hope that you pick me and you decide that I could teach you and go through this journey of learning this craft of orchestration together. And also, I'll do another webinar in the future for composition itself. But every one of these things needs to be handled separately. But if you do composition with me, composition has to also engage in orchestration as well. All right, so this is that's all I have to say for this 6-minute webinar. And so stay safe and be healthy and have a good day. Okay, bye. Take care. Let's see. Finally. I hope I did it better this time.